down the hammer and pick up the pencil. You're about to listen to the Savvy Radio Show. Learn from real-life real estate investors, experience revealed with the Savvy Landlord as your host.
What's going on, Savvy investors? You tuned in to the what? To the Savvy Radio Show. This is your friend, Steve VanCauwenbergh. La-da-da-da-da, Oklahoma City, actually nationwide real estate investing. Hey, I'm down to look at any deal. And as I grow as a real estate investor, some other markets are way better than other markets. It's easy to say. Oklahoma City's super hot, but there's opportunities everywhere. So keep a lookout and stretch yourself because you can do it. So stretching yourself is what this podcast is all about. You know, I decided to do this episode, one, to shed light on how to just understand the concepts, the nuances of real estate investing in general. And so if this next podcast, this is not really organized as well as I would like it to be, but there's a lot of content here. I think that anyone that's into real estate can get some ideas. Maybe it's the decision, the choice, the message that you may never want to do this game, or it could be the message or the inspiration for you to go to the next level. And whatever the level is, right? I mean, I think it boils down to just freedom. Freedom, calling your own shots, not relying on a 9-to-5, financial freedom, time with your family, whatever the case may be. That's what I do. That's what I'm trying to do each and every day and grind it out. And I'll probably get to the point where I talked to my buddy, a real estate investor, and you really have to talk to people to keep things in perspective. So I'm doing this podcast just to inspire you, not to explain like I'm better than you or I'm on another level than you. I came from nothing. If you don't know my story, I definitely recommend buying the Savvy Landlord book on Amazon. And at one time, I genuinely was homeless. No joke. I was living on a couch. Joe Knotts is his name, at Oklahoma Baptist University. I was supposed to go into the military. Just a quick story, you know, if you have not known about me, and this is because I'm about to get into some deep stuff here, so I just wanted to kind of set the stage. But basically, I went to OBU. I came as a Christian later in life. I accepted Jesus in my junior to senior year in high school. I had no idea what I was going to do. Boom, I got to Oklahoma, long story short. And I struggled. I struggled with school in itself. I struggled with the finances behind it. You know, my mom barely would be willing to let me go. She wasn't a Christian at the time. She didn't want me to leave the state. And then economically, there's no way, HELL, for make that to happen. Long story short, I got in. My mom signed the first loan payment, and that was it. And it was Nightmare on Elm Street. If you want to know even a more humbling position, I actually served people in the cafeteria, and it was extremely humbling. And 1992 is when I came to Oklahoma, and I was behind the food line. You know, you smell like a cheeseburger, and students are coming in front of you, your peers, and you're taking a big spoon and you're putting food on their plate. And then I was in the catering department because I was so desperate to succeed in life. I did whatever it would take. And of course, I had no choice. I had no family. I had a mom that worked 3 jobs, that lived at that time in a mobile home. Yep, a trailer kid, whatever. I never lived in a mobile home, but you know what I'm saying? But I'm just kind of setting the tone for you of that anything is possible. This deal I'm about to walk through, it sounds glamorous, and it's, you know, I don't know what you think, and it really doesn't bother me what you think. But my goal is to inspire you and to let you know where you can come from, that your past isn't your past. Your future is a journey. It could be whatever you want it to be. And so I was on the food line serving people, and life was not easy. So I was just like, I can't do this. I can't even afford these books. And so I decided to join up with the military. And I joined up with the military, and the recruiter said, if you sign up as an EMT, and if you knew me personally, I can't stand blood, but at that time I was so motivated, they said, we'll give you a $4,000 signing bonus. So this is a 1993-ish. And I said, sign me up, Captain, I'm in. So I got into the military, passed the ASVAB, did the physical, and I'm like, Kurt Gowdy, I'm heading over to California to say goodbye to my mom, and I'm going to have a good time. And that, you know, so I did that. And I called the recruiter in San Francisco, and I was like, yo, I'm ready to roll. And they're like, you dummy. You need to go back where you signed up, the recruiting office in Shawnee, Oklahoma. What? No way. And at that time, I was dumb. I would spend all my money because I figured the military would take care of me. That's my first problem. You're thinking that someone can take care of you. Oh, no. I had no money. I was broke like a joke, and I was a joke. And I had to take a Greyhound bus all the way from Oakland to Shawnee. I think it was like 3 or 4 days. It felt like a week. It was $86, and I finally landed in Shawnee with my bag of 3 pairs of socks, 3 pairs of underwear, and 3 white T-shirts. I called the recruiter up. I'm like, yo, I'm ready. Let's do this. I need my 4 Gs. I can't. And they said, Mr. VanCauwenbergh, at that time, I can't remember what he said. He's like, you ain't shipping out. I'm like, hey, I did not enroll in school. I literally have no money, and I'm not joking. I had $0. I barely had the $80, $78 comes to my mind to get to the Greyhound, and they're like, no, you can't go. I mean, this is how ignorant I was at 19 years old. I was like, what? He said, I'm sorry, your paperwork's all messed up, sir, and we can ship you out in November. November? Yo, that's not possible. I either have to enroll at OBU or I'm stuck like Chuck. And he's like, I'm sorry. And I had to pause, and I was like, I didn't know what to do. So at that time, I met this guy named Joe Knotts, and he was in the ministry, or he was going to be a pastor. And I don't know how this all happened, but I remember him vividly telling me, yo, you could stay on my couch. And he lived in Shawnee at some house that was a garage apartment. It was just as big as a garage on the top. And I slept and lived on this couch for a great amount of time. I think it was a couple of weeks. But I remember my man Joe, and I wish I could see him and tell him. I have no idea where he's at to thank him. And it'd be fascinating that he only knows me as this loafer laying on a couch. And, of course, I love Jesus at the time. And this dude, I remember him telling me one day, he's like, yo, where is this going? And I remembered, see how this all started? Where is this going? Where is this going for you? Where are you in your life? Are you making sound decisions? And literally, again, you can chalk it up that I was just this naive little dude, right? Like 19 years old, just confused, thought, I thought all things would align for me. And he's like, where is this going? And I'm telling you, I had no idea where this was going. I thought that I was going to go to college and get a job, and that's what they say, and you're going to be rich, right? And then I was a baby Christian, right? Didn't know what I was doing, right? Obviously, even in this real estate game, if you go read my book, The Savvy Landlord, you realize I don't even know what I'm doing. That's I love it when people read the book. I know when they read the book, they come and say, I feel sorry for you that you went through all that Mick and Meyer, that you went through that. I'm like, at my mind, I'm like, when they say that to me, I'm like, man, that's cool that you read the book. And I feel like a fool, but I wrote the book to help other people not to do what I've done, which is ignorance. Let's get this to the point. This is about don't be ignorant. And I don't even know why I started out this podcast. I had this lengthy podcast lined up for you, ladies and gents, so we may have to make this part 2. So where is this going, Stephen? And I was like, man, I honestly, bro, I don't know. And so I was like, A, I had to get a job, and B, I had to go enroll in school. So one day I just walked on campus. I had no vehicle, and they enrolled me. I just said, I'm enrolling. They I had to take 12 classes so I can be full-time, so I can get financial assistance, AKA get a loan. And at that moment, there's a lot more details, but I remember walking. They were building a brand new Red Lobster in town in Shawnee off of I-40. Yep, I was there when they built that. And I got a job as a server and no idea what I was doing. Thought I was going to change the world. And I needed a place. My homeboy was like, yo, where is this going? Long story short, I found a boarding house that was $100 a month, if I can remember correctly. And it was a 1 room. I mean, the bed barely fit in the room and like 2 chairs. And that's where my whole life began. And that was 93, 94, somewhere around there. And I was in that boarding home, and I got this crazy vision to be in business And I started my very first company, one of many, called God Productions, God's Grace, Obey His Word, Deny the World. That's one. That was the very first company I ever started, and that was a dismal failure. And I was a little DJ, trying to be something, and then I created this company. I got burned on that first one with a friend of mine. Not a friend, or maybe it was. I was just ignorant. And I started the company called M&M Productions. Bang, bang, which if you want to know a little fun fact, the word M&M Productions does not mean mobile music. The word M&M Productions means Messiah in me, because I was madly in love with Jesus, just like I am today. And I started the company, and little did I know that it would ever provide for me in a wonderful way that ushered me into real estate. And today that company is still rolling 20-something years later. It has made another friend of mine, general manager at that time, took the business over after I ran it for 20 years, and he is successful. And one day I'll have him back on the podcast. But I'm excited about that, and that there's something that you can create out of homelessness. I created that business, M&M Productions, when I was at Joe Knotz's garage apartment, and I thought it was a joke. I never knew that it would ever be successful. And the several hundred gigs they do a year here in Oklahoma City, go to okcdj.com. If you need a DJ, a wedding, you get married, whatever, you got a party, these folks, it's not me anymore. They know how to do it. They do it right. And they have other derivatives, a video company now, a photography company, and a photo booth company. And the dude that runs that, Devin Long, has done a phenomenal job. And I'm just humbled to be the one that actually started it. And his family and his legacy will continue to bring that forward for generations to come. And I'm just super stoked about that, but I don't even know why we even get to that deal, because today, with these super long intros, but that's the humble beginnings. I was in a homelessness for real. I was 190 pounds. I weigh like 230 right now. At one time, I weighed 275. I'm trying to give you some perspective. At that time, I weighed 190. I was walking back and forth. That was over a mile to the Red Lobster. And so many blessings were in my life at that time. I had a mentor, and he thought I was on drugs. It was a Christian mentor dude. He was discipling me. He's like, man, is something wrong? You so skinny. And I was madly in love with Jesus. I ain't going to lie, but I had no idea where I was going. Each day I had no idea what my next meal would be. And I'd be on campus, and some beautiful lady would like, hey, you want to come over for dinner with some friends? I was like, you have no, I never told anybody that God provided every inch, every moment. I remember one time walking on campus, and somebody rolled up to me and said, hey, I don't need this sociology book, 260 something back then. And I was like, that is exact class I need. I mean, God is, if you don't believe in that, dude, I'm telling you right now, you just missing out. I'm telling you, what I'm about to tell you just blows my mind of the opportunities when you're faithful. And I don't deserve this next deal that I'm going to break down. And I haven't talked about deals in a while. And I really have some great people in my life that have been texting me that they've been enjoying the podcast. And I'm creating this next podcast. What I'm about to say right now is for them, to give them hope and understanding that you can do it. And then the first time that you've ever listened to this podcast, I want you to get an understanding that anything is possible, especially through Christ. But anything is possible if you're willing to put the work in, if you're disciplined enough. And the word that comes to my mind right now that you need to hear is persistence. You're gonna say, no, I was scared to death when I went and walked into Red Lobster. I was at the time of my life, I really didn't have a legitimate job like that, I guess. I mean, I've had a ton of work. I've been working since I was 11 years old, from phone telemarketing to busboy to working at a retail store at Sears. But it's just crazy that you can come from nothing and you can create your whole new identity, who you are, even the savvy landlord. And I hope that you have your own podcast. And I'm just excited that you listened this long. So I'm tired of talking, but you can do it. And if you want to know more about my journey, about my walk with Christ, let your boy know, because I'm down to share it. And I believe all my success is based on him, but it also takes you to the ability to take risks, be vulnerable, and get out there and get it done, and stop being soft and stop hiding things, and sharing your faith and sharing who you are and what you stand for. And you'd be surprised, the floodgates will just overwhelm you. The right people will come into your world. And that's where I got this deal. That's the longest intro to date. So come on, work with me. But here it is, ladies and gents. I get a call on Friday, and my homeboy calls me and he's like, hey, are you interested in a Family Dollar building? What? Absolutely. You have no idea, homie. That is in my wheelhouse. He's like, yep, I had it on. I'm representing a buyer and he just walked on it. I'm like, what? Why did he walk on it? And there's a lot more nuances, and I can get into that here in a minute. I'll break it down for you and it will come through here. But technically, they had like 45 days, 60 days of due diligence. And they had a $10,000 earnest money on the table, and the closing was on Friday. They walked just at the right time during that due diligence where they were able to get their earnest money back. It was a great trick. Your earnest money goes as long as your due diligence. That's not how I locked this contract up, but we'll get into that here in a minute. And if you can pull over, grab a pen, because I'm going to drop a lot of knowledge, growth, and probably some mistakes and probably some details, that I have not articulated, and I would love to articulate it for you. So write some notes down, holler at me. You can go meet me at savvyinvestors.com. You can meet me on Facebook. My phone number is on there. That's kind of a Google number. You can text in if you want to chat, because there's a lot of nuances here. So let's just set this off straight. So dude calls me up, realtor calls me up. Hey, I got this deal. I'm like, hey. And it's weird because I just got home. I was in my son's room actually working on something. I got home early and I took this call and I was like, wow. I mean, first, what's going on here? The valuation of the building, they had it under contract for $1.150. So it's $1,150,000 on the contract. I was like, hey, that's in my wheelhouse. If you've been following me, that's where I want to be. I want to be in the $500,000 and above. And I'm like, this makes sense. He said on the phone, it's a triple net lease. And I was like, okay. And so my mind starts running. Now I go back to my old school Hustleville. So I was like, okay, with these people, I'm trying to break this down line by line here. So I got the information, asked him some questions, just like, what's the size, how long, why'd they walk? And why they walk was this tenacious lease, and some affidavit popped up about Family Dollar was on notice. Also, Family Dollar was there's some lawyers passing forth from the seller now. There's just a lot of nuance, and I can wear deep into it, but I'm just kind of broad strokes. They weren't happy with the lease. They weren't happy with the transaction process, and they walked. Well, first of all, you need to consider that as an issue. Like, hey, what's going on here? Why would they walk? And they did 45 days, 50, 60 days. He said 45, but I think it was longer of due diligence. So the first thing I was like, hey, got it, man. I'm interested. I gave him a soft yes on the phone, but I also gave him don't call anyone else. And you could call this an off-market deal. You can call this a pocket listing. It was on the market. It didn't close. And this is why I try to harp on you, ladies and gents. You've got to build relationships. This gentleman knew that I could close. He knew I had the resources. He knew I can get it done. And he just busted that deal. So in his world, I'm assuming, I'm just making this up, that he had 60 days, 45 days of drama. He had to work his tail off, and now the deal was busted. And what's the fastest way you can get this ball rolling? So that's just an inclination that I know as a real estate investor, and that's what I want to teach you so you can understand. So I use that for my leverage. So I said this to him. So I hung up the phone, and the first thing I do is I call a hard money investor for many reasons. One, can I use his cash to close at a discount? So, and the great thing is I use this successful hard money lender or money man or private lender in this case because I have a relationship with this individual. He's known for hard money, but he's also a really good friend of mine and has helped me tremendously, more than I could ever imagine to tell you. But if it passes his test, would he loan on it? then it obviously is a deal. And in a situation like this, speed is the essence. I can't be dilly and dally, and I can't just get it on contract and fool around, and I don't want to waste a bunch of time. So that's kind of like my preliminary thing, especially I'm relatively new to the commercial game. I've been in it for 3 years or so, seriously, probably full-time or part-time. I've been in real estate since 1999, 22 years. My very first commercial property was around 2011. So that's about 10 years, 12 years, but still, but for real, like learning cap rates, understanding the lingo, dealing with a different type of banker has roughly been the last couple of years. Okay. So I'm giving you some information. So I got the okay from my lender. He was willing to loan me the money. He had the cash, and we worked back and forth. And, I use this kind of as a guidepost. He said some wonderful things to me, and he would loan on it. So that was a good thing. And then he broke out this one thing, and you in the commercial, he said, that's $7.85 a square foot for this property. In this area, it is minimum 10 to 12 for that space. And it was extremely hot corner. And I was like, wow. Then I definitely wanted to move forward just with that type of lingo. And, commercial is completely, and residential as well, and I didn't learn this as a real estate investor until later in life, that square footage is a huge factor. It's not the ultimate factor in my world. It is now because I'm riding in commercial, but you guys really need to think of like they measure rent by square footage, the replacement value by square footage, insurance is by square footage, disposition by square footage, acquisition by square footage. You just need to know these ratios, these numbers per square foot. So I was like, okay, bang, bang, homie. Appreciate that. And I want it to work. So this is my thinking. I went back to the realtor. I was like, yo, I'm interested. I definitely want to buy it. Call the seller and offer them. I can close next week because my money was ready. The dude had the cash. I'm 1.1 million. I said, offer them 1 million and I'll close in 7 days. Since the title work is already rolling, all the emotions are running high, and it just sounds glamorous already. I already made a mistake. I'm telling you right now. And by the grace of God, they denied me. They turned me down, but they were willing to give me like a $25,000 concession. There was a minor roof repair that needed to be done, not relatively soon, but they had an inspection from the last buyer, and the parking lot through an inspection, they needed about 15 G's on there. So 10,000 on the roof, 15. So they automatically reduced it from their original purchase price of 1.125. Oh, well, I really didn't move my needle. And coming back, realizing, thank God I did not close this deal in 7 days, which I don't know why I even said that, because I figured in my mind, man, if I can get a $100,000 reduction, I can pay my homeboy $50,000 to loan me the money for 30 days. He would be blessed. He would get $50K. I know he would do it. I would get a $50,000 reduction. Boom, I closed it. And then I can get really good, beautiful financing, and I can move this transaction quickly. And honestly, it sounds sexy and it sounds savvy, but the reality was, thank the Lord that it did not close at that time, because that is not enough time for due diligence. And gents and ladies, you need to really buffer and allocate and honestly tell yourself to have as much margin as possible. In my mind, I was like, man, I can execute this. In reality is I could, but if I would have signed off and purchased this property, it would have been a nightmare. And this is what I'm going to break off to you. And I'm in the middle of this transaction right now. And I figured I could do this podcast right now. It's fresh in my mind. It could help you. And then I can see where I need to grow and I need to learn, and I can move forward. And if you listen to this and you're inspired or you have some questions, make sure you tell me. So I actually started writing it down, play by play, and how it went on. So my very first thing was the hard money or private lender, and did the walkthrough. Number two, I actually started diving into all the docs. Now, the private money lender that I went through first, which is a friend, he actually read the lease and he threw up some red flags. I was like, whoa, really? And then during this process, so number two, I downloaded all the docs, started separating the docs, and I started doing my due diligence, putting that in a folder. And then I also put in 2 separate folders, one for the banks, okay, and then one for my staff, management, and then one for my attorney to go through it. So that was number 2. Number 3, I quickly got it under contract. So private money, then I got the download of the docs, started kind of casually looking through the docs, realized that this is going to be a bigger acquisition like I just mentioned, and then I got it under contract. Now, which is interesting how I got it under contract. When you get emotional, and I was like, man, I can, how many short term, I didn't listen in the beginning. I did only a 2-week inspection and a 45-day close. Before I did that, and I knew my bank would close this in a short amount of time, but honestly, that is not enough time, and I have been working my tail off. And the only reason why I have this opportunity to do this podcast is because I'm out of town with my daughter, and she's out with her friends right now, and I'm jammed up in a hotel room doing this podcast because right now I should be doing my due diligence, and I have been, and I'm burned out, and I'm trying not to kill myself, but I feel like I have. So that's why I'm doing a podcast to take a break, but it's just issuing up more drama and nerve-wracking situations. But I got it under contract. I did a quick due diligence, and I saw some issues that I thought I could resolve, and I'm still trying to resolve, and I'm going to break those off. But the number one thing, ladies and gents, you should always lock it up regardless. So then the 4th thing I did was I forwarded it to the lease and the legal aspect to the lawyer. Now already I got to drop $300 something on the attorney. That's the minimum that this gal charges. She's worth every penny. I've talked about that in other podcasts. So boom, I already got some cost built in. After I kind of got that nuance going, step number 5, I sent the details to the bank. I always go to 2 banks. So if you want to, I can expand on these if you want me to, but it will be like a 3-hour podcast. But number 1, I have my private money / hard money lined up. Number 2, I went with the super bank that can do you call a super bank a credit union. Credit unions, again, I could spend 3 hours on this. Credit unions have the most favorable terms in the world, okay? Is because they're under a whole different way of doing business, okay? If you don't know this, they don't have to pay tax. So they're considered a nonprofit, and that's another story. And so I sent it to them, and 30-year AM, probably 20% down, probably 3.25%, 3.5% or 4% is what I guessed. And then I sent it to another bank that's more real estate friendly. That's a Speed Bank. And this bank, I love this bank, and I use this bank for acquisitions. Usually park it there for a year or 2, get stabilized. Sometimes I do interest only loans, and kind of just get the ball rolling, get the cash flow flowing, and moving on. Now in this case, this ball already had cash flow flowing, as what I understood. And when you find out more of a due diligence, you'll figure that out later. So bring that up if I need to talk about the more cash flow. So I shot it off to the bank. One bank came back with some cool questions, several questions. I've actually written a class on this. I'm trying to write a class on this, so I have that going. And then the other bank was interested. One bank already drove. Well, I figured that out later. I answered all their questions. I'm trying to do a play-by-play. So that's number 6. I answered all their questions. Then I moved on and sat down with the realtor that presented the deal to me. And then, of course, at this time, a representing realtor that has the listing, you got to keep in mind, you got to have a filter because it's advertisement. There was some advisement, but this realtor is a wonderful person, but he's relatively new to the game like I am. And so he just wants to make a sale like everybody else. That's why I'm always not a super fan of realtors. I like them. I think they're important. But at the same time, what's their motive? They need to sell the property in general, right? They need to sell the property. So what's their motive, right? Nothing wrong here. We get into that later. Number 8, I met with the lawyer, and the lawyer drafted several pages of all the concerns. And I was like, wow. And so I read some of those, and I'll break down those concerns on another time. I guess maybe I can break it down per episode. But this lease from Family Dollar is murder. It's once in It is lump-sided. I have all my points, and I'll make another podcast on that. It is scandalous, and I'm not trying to dog Family Dollar, but these poor people, let me break this down. These people that are selling this property, it's been in their family for about 30 years. They built this building. They've owned this building. It has been passed down from grandfather. It's two families that have connected. They've passed it down to their sons. Their sons have passed it down, and they've been taking it to the rat. They've been getting abused. In a triple net lease, it is that the tenant does pay the taxes, does pay the insurance, but this lease is so scandalous that you have to notify them. You have to pay for the taxes and insurance, which is pretty typical in commercial. And then they have to give them 180 days to pay. Well, come to find out, and I think this is one of the main reasons why the buyer before me bounced, is because they haven't paid the taxes since 2018. Now, the landlord, the seller, has paid the taxes, but I think it's very interesting that Family Dollar is not going to pay you. And their lease is extremely scandalous, and there's so much more detail. That's what I'm saying. This is another podcast because I can dive down, and I'm amped up. Like, I'm calm right now. I'm calm, but I'm telling you, I just feel sorry for this landlord. I feel sorry they've been taken advantage of. When you read this 60-page lease, it is one-sided. There's no default clause. There's no breach clause. It's all for them and nothing for the landlord. And I'm like, and there's even one document that I saw about, man, I wanted to go into this so deep for you. Let me give you some nuances. So this lease was written in 2007, and it's supposed to have every 5 years, it has a term. And so, you do the math, right? Every 5 years. Well, Family Dollar is so scandalous that during the second term, or right before the second term or third term, they made this landlord sign an affidavit to continue on the very first term. So basically for 12 years, Family Dollar has been paying the original lease amount, $6,400 since 2007 on $1 million property. And they've just been taking advantage of him. And they threatened to walk on these folks back in 2014. And I'm assuming that's when the world crumbled. And the landlord was probably kind of nervous and just signed this document. Well, that landlord, ding, ding, is passing it on. They're trying to sell this property. And that's one nuance. And I'm trying to find an attorney. I'll get into that in a minute. I'm cutting to the chase. But you see, this lease is so crazy. I'm telling you, just for me, and the $5,000 earnest money that I've already put down is worth just to read this lease. It's so scandalous. It is the most amazing thing I've ever seen to date. There is nothing for the landlord. It is all for the tenant. I don't even know how it's possible. Let me give you one nuance, and I guess I'll break this down later when we go through this deal again. But here's the thing. It says in the lease that you, landlord, will pay for the parts for the HVAC, but we, tenant, will pay for the repair. We'll pay for the repair. So a triple net lease technically is the tenant pays for everything. The landlord just usually provides the shell, the walls, and maybe the roof. You, tenant, triple net lease, you maintain the whole building. That's like the holy grail of commercial real estate. That's why I'm there. It is not easy. Those are not easy to find. They're out there, but they're not cheap. You don't get deals on triple net leases, and the return is really dismal, like 3, 5, 6%. Maybe in a really good market for an investor, you could find an 8 cap, a 10 cap, maybe a 12, but they're very rare. Big industrial investment firms buy these up because they're safe. Yeah, whatever. Not from a Family Dollar, but just understand the nuance of it. It says in the lease very clear. Here's another part in the lease. It says, you, landlord, maintain the parking lot and we'll stripe it. Again, a triple net lease, you maintain common area maintenance. You, tenant, you maintain all that stuff. But don't you think that's interesting? So if there's a pothole, I'm assuming it's not very clear. That's a problem with this lease, is that I fill the pothole in and then you stripe over it? I mean, you hear me? This is crazy. This is intense. This is why I have to mark this down for my child. This is the reason why I'm doing this podcast. This is from Maxwell James. Homie, when I die and you come across these deals, don't try to close it in 7 days. Imagine if I would have closed this scandalous lease. And I'm telling you, there's been several times through this project. I've only been on it for less than a week. I try to quit and kill myself and say, why you walk away? And I called my homie. And I'll tell you about that in a minute. But you see, this lease is so crazy. So I met with the lawyer. She broke me down. I called another real estate investor. They broke me down and said, I was like, is this normal? I'm on number 10. So number 8, I met with the lawyer. Number 9, I met with another real estate investor for some advice. I'm like, is this for real? Is this how it is out there in the gangsterness? And then number 10, I talked to the general manager, my own general manager. She looked at the lease. I made her read it. She read the whole thing and she was not happy. But my goal here is to cover all my bases, because she brought some things up that was misreading. One of the things was there was a lot of exceeding things in the lease. Here's one that she read and that I read and that my lawyer interpreted something different. And I think that's something that we need to discuss as real estate investors. Something's written on a piece of paper by an attorney, but who interprets it? It's the judge, right? Because eventually that's the goal. If there's any kind of breach, you're going to go in front of a judge. Well, this lease says, the taxes should not exceed $4,500, and the insurance should not exceed $4,000 something. Okay, and I almost had a panic attack, and I was like, it's impossible because the taxes on it right now are $8,500 for 2022, okay, or 2021, and of course it's $1 million property. That just makes sense. It's in line with the taxes. Now, when I purchased this property for 1.1, these taxes are going to go up. I'm like, damn, there goes my cash flow again. Well, I had to dig even more deeper in your due diligence, and I called the lawyer back. She had a heart attack. She's like, no, it reads only for that first 12 months of the lease. And then I went back and I had to do more due diligence. And this is how crazy this deal is. I had to go back and do financial analysis. That's where I'm at right now on the seller's books. They have Family Dollar has been paying taxes that have risen every year. That exceeding clause is only for that 12 months. But I'm telling you, I had diarrhea for about 2 minutes. Number 10, I went with my general manager. She read it, brought some things to light. Then number 11, I made an insurance request. Now, all these steps have been through and within several days. Okay, so within 1 day, I've done a lot of this due diligence. So then I contacted 2 insurance companies. In the lease, it states that they want replacement costs, that I have to get 2 forms of general liability. I'm saying this is not for the faint at heart, okay? Coming from the hood, the ghetto, living on some dude's couch, not dumb cat. So, and doing this lease is extremely humbling. So then I got all that. Then I've been working with insurance, getting replacement costs. Oh, man, I forgot to add lost rents. Oh, man, I got to do that. Then on number 12, I had to create an LLC, because if I really need to close this in 45 days, I have to have an LLC created. So I called the bank. I communicated with the bank. How's that ball rolling? Within 7 days, they're working on it. Got 2 banks working on it. Then I called my real mentor, from 1992. He's like, Steven, this is crazy. He said, this is not unnormal. This is not unusual. But he shed some light. You probably need to figure out a way. He gave me some great feedback. I'm telling you, when you have a real mentor in your world, when the world around you is crashing and burning and you think you're going to die and lose every dollar, my man just broke it for me. He's like, you might want to find an attorney, a high-powered attorney that can break this type of lease. He's like, this is not a proper lease. One of the other things, a little tip for you, it doesn't even have a deposit. So I chatted with the attorney that day in passing, and she said, you don't have to have a deposit to make it a lease, in your word of proper lease. I was like, wow. So then after that, I started writing out a summary, just random, of pros and cons. And I think this is my new rule from here on in, and hopefully you get this from this very long podcast, that you need to create a summary of every transaction that you're doing. What's the pros and what's the cons? And I'm talking about life. And this is a lot of things. There's 17 more years left on this lease technically, because Family Dollar abused this landlord during 2014 and made him sign this crazy document. So this is all before, just so you know, these 14 steps have all before I even looked at the building. Isn't that crazy? I mean, the hours, the money, the time, and this is what it takes to be in commercial. And then I walked through the building. I had another friend, another investor, great friend of mine, homeboy, came and walked it with me. It was actually a decent, well-maintained building within reason. Because here's another thing. I saw the filters in the ceiling that were a little old. And who's maintaining that? Again, in the lease, it says, Mr. Landlord, you're paying for the parts, which could be an A coil. And Mr. Tenant, you're supposed to pay for the repairs or maintenance. Well, here's the deal. If they're not maintaining the building and it breaks, who's responsible? This document is interpretation, and it says me, parts. So that's a concern. So I wrote these pros and cons down. I walked through the building. Hey, it's my first time. In my mind, I had to get through the legal. I sat down with another real estate investor. This is crazy. I mean, all this labor and just walking it through this individual who brought some insight, who's relatively new to commercial, asked me some key questions. So then number 17, I went back and I remind the realtor of all the things I need. I need tax returns from the seller. Yep, you need tax returns. One of my banks requested the tax returns. And I thought that was the most amazing nuance. If you called me and asked me for my tax returns, Donald Trump came in my mind. No, I'm just playing. But the reality was, I was like, okay. But if I was desperate to sell the building, I'm going to issue my tax return and redact all the things that are on there. But my banker was freaking phenomenal. And he said, hey, tax returns don't lie. Financial statements, QuickBook, balance sheets can be manipulated, or spreadsheets can be manipulated. He didn't say this. This is what I got. But tax returns, people are really not going to lie on those. And if those tax returns marry up to the accounting, hey, you're good to go. And I was like, ooh. So that was a tip. I also, at 18, I set the step there. I called the bank after I reminded the realtor of the things I needed. My banker has been working on it for 7 days. He gave me the thumbs up, bank number one, the credit union, and he broke it down to me, explaining that they have done several Family Dollar leases. Ooh, and he gave me some warnings of small town Family Dollar. And what he said exactly, as I quote, if they don't make money, they bounce out the next day. They will leave that building and the landlord high and dry. Wow. Again, no wonder these leases are gangster, because there's no default clause in this lease. Ooh, they can bounce, but I'm trapped. Ooh, they can bounce. So then number 19, I got to call my lawyer, because after I've done this due diligence, to try to strategize. And then number 20 probably is call another lawyer. And then number 21 is for me to find the attorney that the previous buyer bounced on and see if I can retain them and talk to them. I know this sounds crazy. And listen, it's nerve-wracking. I want you to put it in perspective, and I'm humble about it. I am making $1 million decision. That's all me. At the end of the day, it affects my family. It affects my staff. And it could be up to 17 years, minimum 12 years of pain. And so I hope that this podcast helps you. I hope that you got butterflies in your stomach. Like, can you do this? If you could say yes, then we need to be friends, because I need a friend in my life. I need somebody. I'm telling you, I'm racking my brain. Who could I call that could help me with this deal? What attorney has had this type of experience? How is this a good deal? Is this a bad deal? In a nutshell, when the cash flow is $6,400 for the monthly rent, fake triple net, with an ATM machine out on the parking lot, which that's a totally separate nuance, a totally separate lease. They pay $650 a month. So it's roughly about $7 a month. And I had if I get good terms, it's roughly about $5 a month. So there's a potential for $2,000 a month in cash flow. That's a slam dunk. You know, I got to put 20% down, which is around $225. Now, you got to think about it logically. I'm trapped with these folks, and they're in control, and I'm the little stepchild. And $2,000 sounds good, but just a roof on this facility is $100,000, maybe $60,000. HVAC, $15,000, $20,000. So 1 year of cash flow could be wiped away instantaneously with a repair. There's 5 large units on there, or 4 large units in a kind of a smaller unit. The roof, I mean, the AC is 15 years old, okay? These are just some things you got to think about. Now, what's the positives? Now, I'm going to break this down on the next podcast because I think you're kind of worn out by me by now because I'm worn out just hearing my own dang voice. Man, I got to breathe. There's some pros here. There's some cons here. There's equity pay down, but not really on a 30-year term, you know? So if you have some insight, if the Holy Spirit talked to you and say, VanCauwenbergh, you need to buy this building, or the Holy Spirit said, hey, let's partner, or hey, I'll buy you out of the contract. Hey, I'm open. Call your boy. Let me know. Hey, this sounds like a great deal, but the greatest deal, I think, is that you can own your own asset. I encourage you, whatever you do, go buy assets, give back, give to a charity, bless somebody else. Go give a $100 bill to somebody and go buy assets. My name is Steve VanCauwenbergh. You tuned in to the Savvy Radio Show. Go to Savvy Investors. Let's connect. Talk to me. Let me know what your thoughts are.
Thanks for listening to the Savvy Radio Show. Glide online and listen to our other motivating episodes at savvyradioshow.com. Connect on Twitter at LandlordBook and always be buying assets.